All right, so today we're pulling back the curtain on the world of beauty school. And let me tell you, it's way more complex than you might think. We're talking about a place where big dreams of being a creative entrepreneur smash right into this hidden maze of federal regulations, state laws, and believe it or not, billion-dollar finance. And the first clue that something's off, it's the price tag.
I mean, seriously, get your head around this question. You've got two schools, maybe just a few miles from each other. They're both training you for the exact same state license. So how in the world can one of them justify charging more than 3 times the price of the other? What's going on here?
Well, the answer has nothing to do with fancier scissors or celebrity guest teachers. It all comes down to one thing: who is paying the bill? See, the really expensive schools, they're eligible to accept federal student aid. This is something called Title IV funding. The cheaper schools, they're not. And that one little difference creates two completely separate universes for beauty education. So let's dive into this, into what we're calling the federal financial aid engine, because you've got to understand, the moment a school gets the green light to tap into government money, its entire business model, its entire reason for being, gets turned completely upside down. A really important study by two researchers, Salini and Golden, found something that should make you sit up and pay attention. They discovered that cosmetology programs that take federal aid charge, on average, 78% more than similar programs that don't. Just let that sink in. Economists actually have a name for this. They call it the Title IV tuition premium. And you know what? That 78% number isn't some random coincidence. It often lines up almost perfectly with the maximum amount of federal grants and student loans a student can possibly get. So what's really happening is that the very existence of this federal money creates an incentive for schools to jack up their prices, basically capturing all those funds and handing them right back to the students in the form of debt. For years and years, the system just kept turning along, creating this cycle of super high tuition and mountains of student debt. But now, finally, the Department of Education is stepping in. They're starting to ask a very tough, very pointed question. Are these expensive programs actually paying off for the students and for the taxpayers funding them? And that question has led to this, the Gainful Employment Rule, or GE. It's a brand new accountability system, and it's designed to do one thing: force vocational programs like cosmetology schools to prove that their graduates can actually get a decent job and make enough money to pay back their student loans. So, how does the government check on this? Well, the whole thing basically boils down to two simple tests. First up is the debt to earnings test. It's simple. Can you actually afford your loan payments based on what you're earning? And second is the earnings premium test, which asks a really fundamental question. Are you, with this fancy new certificate, earning more than a typical person in your state who only has a high school diploma? Okay, and this is where the story gets really dramatic. Based on these new rules, early estimates suggest that a jaw-dropping 92.5% of cosmetology students are currently in programs that would fail the new earnings test. This isn't just a small tweak. This is a potential tidal wave that could reshape the entire industry. And the stakes here could not be higher. If a school's program fails either one of those tests for just 2 out of 3 years in a row, poof, they get cut off from all federal financial aid. And for schools where, 80 or 90% of their entire income comes from that aid, this is a straight-up existential threat. Game over. But believe it or not, the federal money problem is only half the story. On the ground, schools are also fighting this crazy multi-front war with state licensing boards on one side and incredibly complex federal labor laws on the other. This table just shows you how messy it is. Look at this. To be a cosmetologist in Kentucky, you need 1,500 hours of training. In Texas, it's a third less, only 1,000. But then for a nail tech, Texas makes you do 150 times more hours than Kentucky. It's this bizarre patchwork of rules, and schools have to navigate every single one of them perfectly or risk losing their license to operate. And if that wasn't enough, schools are staring down a huge legal landmine every single time a student cuts hair or gives a facial in the school's clinic. It's this one critical question. At what point does that student stop being a learner and become an unpaid employee? And I'm telling you, this question is driving massive lawsuits all over the country. To figure it out, courts use what they call the Primary Beneficiary Test. They look at these 7 different factors to determine the economic reality of the situation. They're asking, who's really benefiting here? Is this school clinic a genuine classroom, or has it just become a business that's running on free labor? It is a very, very fine line for schools to walk. And here is the absolute key from the courts, a direct warning. This legal protection only covers actual educational tasks. A recent decision made it crystal clear that if students are spending their hours doing stuff like laundry or endless sweeping, the school could be on the hook for back pay and huge penalties.
So, you've got all this pressure from the feds, from the states, from labor laws. How does a beauty school even survive in this environment? Well, the answer seems to be a combination of new technology and a completely different way of thinking. Let's start with something basic. Just proving a student was actually in class. An old school paper time card is super easy to cheat. Your friend can just buddy punch for you, right? But in this new world of high-stakes audits, that one tiny act of fraud can literally put a school's entire license and all its federal funding at risk.
And that is why biometric time clocks have become an absolute game changer. By using a fingerprint or a facial scan, they create a record that's impossible to fake. That means your data is super accurate, it's completely tamper-proof, it's ready for an auditor at a moment's notice, and it just wipes out the whole buddy punching problem. It's all about making sure your data is solid gold from the second a student walks through the door.
But it's more than just tech. The smartest schools are adopting a new philosophy, something called the compliance reality doctrine. Basically, it's about being brutally honest with students. A school's job isn't to promise you'll be the next celebrity stylist. No, their primary legal duty is to prove that you did the required training hours so you are eligible to go get your license. That's it. Period.
And what this all points to is a massive shift for the whole industry. For decades, the system was all about inputs. How many hours did you sit in a classroom? Now it's all about outputs and accountability. Did you actually get your license? Do you have a job? And can you pay back your student loans? So we're entering this new era of transparency and data-driven rules, which of course leaves us with one last big question. In an industry that is built on artistry, on personal expression, when compliance becomes king, what happens to creativity?